All right, good to have you with us. It is now 25 away from 8 o'clock. I'm Gareth Edwards. This is the SA Morning. So let's keep a very close eye on water infrastructure, water problems, water solutions. What do those look like? Well, we have data. We like data. We're going to use data. The latest Blue Drop Watch report making some shocking findings about the quality of our water, finding that more than half of all municipal water treatment systems are actually in a critical condition. We know how bad some areas are, like Hammanskraal. We were up there a couple of weeks ago. That's where the cholera outbreak seems to be the biggest problem. The issue there seems to be who exactly is responsible for the water coming in, who's responsible for treating it, and who's responsible for the distribution of that water. Well, let's bring in and welcome Professor Mike Muller, civil engineer, registered civil engineer and public policy expert, making time for us to come in and talk to us this morning. Also adjunct professor at WITS, by the way, School of Governance. Prof, thanks for coming in and making time. We are also, by the way, going to take a couple of calls. The Prof has been very kind. We could take a couple of calls from you. 011 537 9431. What I'm going to ask you to do is just to give us your comment or your question for the Prof, if you want, but just keep it nice and short for us, just 30 seconds. Give it some thought. Phone in 011 537 9431. Prof, morning. Thank you for coming in. So when we talk about our focus on water infrastructure this morning, our viewer question is wide-ranging. Let me throw it to you. You can take it where you want to from here. Is it a money issue? Is it a management issue? Or is it a manpower issue?
Okay. You know, morning to you and to your viewers. I think we've got to actually say that difficult answer. It all depends. It depends where you are. In some places there's not enough money. In other places there's not the right management, and in some places they have some real technical problems. But every place is different, and this idea that you can just talk about water in general isn't helpful. There's 150 plus municipalities who are responsible for distributing the water. There's 9 water boards that kind of produce pure water and distribute it to some of those municipalities, and there's a national government that's trying to give oversight and make sure they do the right thing at the local level. So there's lots of different people involved, lots of different places. Anyone who says there's one problem and one solution actually doesn't know what they're talking about.
So fair enough, and I think many people would agree, but it's too complex to try and just pick one. But would there be a golden thread? Is there something that if you were to be looking at the headlines of all the newspapers and websites, is there a golden thread maybe on the aging infrastructure, for example?
As an engineer, I have to say, you can have good infrastructure, but if you don't manage it properly, you won't get what you want from it. You can have a lot of money, but if you don't build the right things, you won't get the right result. So I do think in the end, it's management that matters, and getting the right people in the right place, doing the right things is critical. And where that happens, the water tends to come out of the tap, tends to be drinkable, and everyone's happy. And it's quite affordable. But there's lots of places where the management is weak for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, we can discuss those reasons as well, because at least what you want is an example of what is working. Try and then copy and paste that, carbon copy over to places that aren't working. But as I ask you, Prof, is water in our country safe to drink off the back of that water report? I also want to bring in one of our viewers calling in on 011 537 9431. I think it's Gogo with us this morning. Gogo Pretty, good morning. You're live on eNCA. What's your comment or question? Is Gogo with us, or have we lost her? I think we've lost Gogo. All right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to keep that line open, 011 537 9431. If you want to quickly call in, you can go ahead and do that for a comment or a question for the good Prof as well, because where Gogo was going to go, my producer telling me now, Prof, was is water safe to drink? And if you're in doubt, what products do you put into water? You just dump some HTH in there?
I think I heard the problem that she wants to get a borehole in Midrand, and what is it going to be safe? The answer is you don't know until you get it tested. You might have a neighbour with a septic tank leaking sewage into your borehole, in which case you really want to know about that. If you're worried about Pollution, bacterial pollution, yes, you're quite right. You can put some chlorine in the water. If it's in the household, you can actually put a teaspoon into 20 litres of, it's a 20-litre bucket, and that will actually leave it there for half an hour, make sure it's properly stirred. It'll be bacteriologically safe. You might not like the smell, but it's safe. But there may be something else there. You might have a chemical plant nearby leaking chemicals into your water. So if you're going to drill a borehole in an inhabited area, get the water tested before you start drinking it. You can wash with it, you can shower with it, but drinking, you want to be sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe we have Gogo Prutti back with us, 011-537-9431. Gogo, good morning. You're live with us on eNCA. Tell me, did the Prof answer your question? Is that what you were asking? If you can hear me, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, Gogo, go ahead. You're live. What's your question or comment?
Yes, my question is, sir, morning, sir, and morning, Prof. Morning to you, viewers. Chair, sir, I want to ask to the Prof about the cleaning water chemical. Which chemical must I put in my tank, my water tank, because I'm using the borehole, sir?
Yeah. So I think the answer to that, Gareth, is exactly that.
Yeah.
You can use that water from your borehole for washing and bathing and the rest. If you want to drink it, it would be a good idea to have it tested first, just to make sure there's nothing that's dangerous there. And if you're worried about it being unhealthy, you can always disinfect it with a little bit of Jik. You can put a few drops of Jik in 1 litre bottle of the water and just shake it up. Or you can take a bucket of water, 20 litres, and put a teaspoonful or so of Jik in it, stir it up, leave it there for 20 or 30 minutes, and it'll be safe to drink. But the alternative is use the water for all the things except drinking, and then for drinking you can boil it.
You can boil it.
So use your borehole. You're saving water for somebody else, but be careful before you drink it.
Okay, and I wanted to ask, while we keep the lines open as well, let me just remind you, 011-537-9431. If you want to get hold of us, you can just a comment or a quick question with the Prof while he stays with us as well. Water tankers seem to be a bit of a problem. I was out in Hammanskraal a couple of weeks ago, Prof, and we know the water issue there, Rooival, etc. But then we were hearing from residents saying that the water tankers themselves, I imagine these are municipal water tankers, the water that they're getting from those water tankers also aren't very good. How do we make sure those are actually, but it's not the same as the same for Gogo. This is an industrial way of doing things.
If you're running a water tanker distribution, you have quality control. I've been involved in those. I've run those. You make sure that the water that goes in is clean and disinfected. You make sure the tanks are disinfected every day, and you have people checking that all the time. And if you don't, you'll find drivers will take shortcuts. You'll find drivers who'll go and dump a load for a small payment, and they'll go and fill up somewhere close by, and who knows what they're getting. But if you're managing this properly, you can just deliver safe water. The question is it being properly managed? It comes back to my first point. The issue in most places is, have you got the right management? Are they doing the right things? Are they on top of the job? From there on, we can get the money right, we can get the technical things right. Let's get the management right at that municipal level.
Yeah, on the ground as well. Another caller on 011-537-9431. Mrs. Naidu, you're calling in from Honeydew. Morning, Mrs. Naidu. 30 seconds. What do you have? Mrs. Naidu, go ahead. You're live with us on eNCA. If you can hear me, Mrs. Naidu, what's your comment or question? All right, looks like we may have... Go ahead, Mrs. Naidu, go ahead.
The brain.
Right, I can. Go ahead, Mrs. Naidu.
Yeah, put the bronze behind the brain. Engage the brain before they put the tongue in here. That's what's happening here in this country. That's all. Okay.
Yes, I think we should put our brains in gear even first thing on Monday morning, and it comes back to the management issue. If you want a proper service, make sure that the people who go in there on Monday morning know what they're supposed to do. Have they got enough chemicals to last them the end of the week? Have they paid the electricity bill? Is there diesel in the generator in case there's load shedding? That's not a bad start. We do need to manage our services properly. Managing also requires planning. We need to look...
Yeah, other than chlorine, Prof, just finish your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, so I do think we need to plan in the long term as well as in the short term, but start with the short term, make sure things are working, and always be thinking, what am I going to do next month, next year, and in 5 years' time when I've got 10,000 more people to serve. If you think like that, you can provide a decent service.
Yeah, I think we're getting a lot of comments coming through, Prof. They're actually just asking you for practical advice now. But while you're here, if you'll allow me to abuse your knowledge for a second and indulge us. We heard from Gogo earlier, you were explaining about JIC or something else to put in water. If they don't want to use something like chlorine, is there any other way of doing it? I suppose what they would be asking is, how safe really is the boiling of the water? Does it get rid of everything? How would you even know?
Boiling is the safest way of making sure your water is safe to drink. I would not use any other chemicals unless you know exactly why you're doing that. You're trying to kill germs, essentially, and that's what we are trying to do by using chlorine. Chlorine's been used for 100 years. It is very effective. Many other things can help, but they're not as good. So stick to what's simple, and if you want to have water that smells nice, put something that smells nice in it, but it doesn't make it safe. Either boil it or use some form of disinfection using chlorine, and it can be just HTH or JIC. Use the right amounts. Keep it standing long enough for it to work, and your water will be safe to drink. But boiling is perhaps the easiest if you've got the ability to do that.
Perhaps use all of that, like the JIC, and then boil it after that as well. I think we've got time for just one more question. Hopefully our line is working okay. 011-537-9431. Godfrey, good morning. You got a question or comment? Very quickly, what you got for us? Good morning, Godfrey.
It's a comment. I think the infrastructure crisis is due to a lack of governance and accountability. So a question to Professor Engineer is, don't you think that it's important that we create an Office of Engineer General to hold all infrastructure stakeholders accountable? That's my question.
I appreciate it. Godfrey, thank you very much indeed. It's actually a very good question.
Nice question.
Prof, you're lined
up.
Yeah,
I like that idea, Godfrey. You know, in many parts of the world, if you're a qualified registered engineer like I am, when they speak to you, they say, Prof Engineer. They regard you, an engineer, as equally important as a professor or a doctor. And we do need to respect the profession. I'm not sure that an engineer general would be helpful, because I can tell you that electricity and roads and water and the other things, the railways, are all very different. But I do think we need to give real respect and support to the senior professionals who try to run organizations, who quite often have to work with politicians or administrators who want them to do things that don't make sense. It used to be the case that in a city like Johannesburg, many of the cities in South Africa, there would have been a city engineer who would have been responsible for the technical matters. And so I do think we need to promote the role and the rank of the engineer. And I always look at successful countries. I look at China, for instance, which has grown tremendously and done made progress in both poverty and economy, and about a third at one stage of their Politburo was engineers and scientists. Wow. And I think that might go some way to explaining their success. You might not like some part of their politics, but at a technical level, they've done very well. Put the engineers in charge? Well, I think you need to look over our shoulder, but let us tell you what needs to be done, and I think things would be a lot better, yes. And I have to say, there's also a lot more young engineers. It used to be an old white man's profession. I'm glad to say I'm able to step back. There's an awful lot of good young black engineers wanting to be given a chance. Let's give them a chance and let's support them, and things will get better.
You actually took the last question I had for you, Prof, out of my mouth about the young engineers coming through. As well, I was going to ask you about that, but you've done that for me brilliantly, as always, Prof. Mike Muller, thank you very much for coming in and also being part of what really was you getting a chance to call in and ask the questions as well. I've said this before, it's your show. You get to have your say as far as possible. We are going to open up that line. The lines are closed again now for the moment, though. We'll open them up again for you in the last hour. My huge thanks for coming in, being part of the show. Professor Mike Muller, civil engineer and adjunct prof at the Wits University School of Governance.